Thanks everybody for joining us for another episode of our One Spot podcast. I want to thank Teri for joining me on today's podcast. Before we get to your background, you very quickly suggested the topic of aging reports when I asked for something to discuss. So I'm curious why you think it's a good place to start when we're discussing revenue cycle management and the billing process.
Yeah. Hi, Cindy. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and participate in your podcast. It's very exciting. So, when we were talking about you starting this and what would be some good topics, that was the first thing that came to my mind. And I think part of the reason that is because when I find working with practices, that's one of the things that they get to when they have time, and sometimes they never have time. So it's one of those things that are always like, yeah, we need to do that, but it's not put as a top priority. And there's so much that you can learn from tracking your aging and looking at your billing metrics and making sure you're on track. There's just so much you can tell from that. Like the aging tells a story about your practice. So if you don't really know what the whole story is, you're like missing opportunities in both your strengths and your weaknesses. You're making assumptions without having that full data picture to back that up.
Makes perfect sense. I probably drive people nuts because anytime I have a question about something, I'm like, I don't want the answer. I know it'll make you crazy, but I need the entire story. Like, don't tell me just how you got the answer. Tell me, or
Yeah.
don't tell me the answer. Tell me how you got the answer. Like, yeah. Maybe that's like the weird math person in me. Like, explain your
No,
work. Yeah,
no.
but it makes sense that the aging reports is a bit of that. So
Yeah, absolutely. We always, I think from a revenue cycle standpoint, we're like, oh, yeah, it's about the coding and it's about the billing practices, right? But why you do those things is really important, and how those each of those individual things are like building blocks that add to the overall health of your practice from a cash flow standpoint. So it's all important.
it is. All right. So there's a reason you were the first person I reached out to for the podcast. I know your background and why you're an expert in this, but can you share a little bit about your background and how you became the expert on billing for PECAA?
Yeah, so um, great question. Well, I've been in the eye care industry for 35 years. Um, and it's been quite a journey, right? I don't think anybody starts out going, I want to go into billing and coding. That's my favorite. But you start out in the practice, and you just kind of go through things throughout the years, and you find yourself somebody often in the billing and coding world. I think I started as an optician, and then I did office management. I did surgery scheduling. I worked for an MDOD practice for a number of years. And then it just became a need. That was one of the things that once I started getting a handle on the billing side of things, I was like, I really like this piece. And the more I could connect all the dots between all the operational pieces and how everything flowed together, for me, that was the fun part. Um, Believe it or not. And so, so I think it was a series of, hey, we have this need. Are you interested? And me having the curiosity of, yes, I definitely want to learn that and take that on. And the more I learned it, the more I loved it, really. And so I just kind of, from an education standpoint, from personal, I just kind of, this was always going to be something, I'm just going to do this for 2 years and see how it went. And then I'm going to move on to something else. 35 years later, here I'm
It's
still here.
stuck.
But I don't feel like it's because it, there wasn't any other place to go. It was just like, this is what I like to do. This is, so you just kind of start your education and your degrees and your certifications around, how to better facilitate this area of a practice. And I love it.
Yeah, it's funny because as I've started to spend more time in the world of billing, and I've been in eye care obviously from the supplier side of the business, the software side of the business, but I've been doing this for 28 years, 26 years. 26, 20, 2000, or 1999. So 26 years. Yeah. And it's funny because I'm like, I know how important the patient care is. Like every practice, everybody you talk to, they're like, our first most important thing is patient care. But the thing that I relate to the most is the importance of getting paid for what you're doing. Like everybody would probably work for free doing the things that they love if they could. But when you are trying to run a successful practice, your responsibility, not only to your patients in the care, but to your staff and the team and making sure everything goes well. So I have this new found like sisterhood or brotherhood with everybody who's working in billing because, obviously patient care comes first, but making sure the businesses run well and everybody's getting paid for the care that's being delivered is really the only way a practice can be successful. So I kind of feel like I have this new, relationship when I'm talking to the team about that. So, all right. So you said aging reports or looking at the aging was kind of the first thing that would be a good topic for the podcast. So what can you, looking at an aging report, what can you tell about a practice? I know you spend a lot of time working with practices.
Mhm. So yeah, I get so part of my role with PECAA is as a billing and coding advisor. So I get to work with practices across the nation. So I get to work with a lot of different size practices and different specialties within the eye care industry. And I would say that I'll get a series of questions like, how do I know that my biller is doing what they're supposed to be doing? Or how do I maximize my insurance revenue? Or, how do I improve on my patient aging? Or all these different pieces. And the answer, is in your accounts receivable. It tells the story of your practice. So if you're looking at your accounts receivables, it will tell you where your area of efficiencies are. Do you have the right tools? Are you looking at the right resources? Are your internal processes working for you? Are your insurance plans working for you, or are you working for them? It's a data point that all of our EHR systems gather this information, but I don't think we all take the time to actually analyze it and say what's working and what isn't working and how do we make improvements. So I think oftentimes we'll say, okay, well, I feel like our practice is growing and I'm looking at our production and our production is up, but maybe the revenue isn't. So why is that? It's not always because you're not getting the claims out and your payments posted on time. Sometimes it's the mix of your payers. Some of your payers are maybe, not reimbursing you appropriately, or you don't have, you have a lot of vision plans and not a lot of medical plans. And so your overall reimbursement's on the lower side. Or maybe it is that you have outgrown your revenue cycle and now your one person biller that you've had forever who's fantastic suddenly seems like they can't keep up, and you're not really understanding why and where some good reinforcements might be. So looking at all your aging, not just to make sure it's getting done, but how it's working, um, is your biller, not so much as your biller doing all the work, but can they keep their hands around everything in the same efficient way as they have it before? And are there other ways that you can add those efficiencies without necessarily adding another person? So are you utilizing your clearinghouse the way it should be? Or are you implementing other resources such as OneSpot to kind of help facilitate some of those services and making your billing processes more efficient? There's so many things that you can do. And then doctors sometimes will be like, I want to add a whole new line of service. I'm going to start a dry eye clinic, or I'm going to start aesthetic medicine, which is all fantastic, but can your revenue cycle support that? And it's more than just, can I code it and bill it and get, paid for it? It's like, what is it going to take to code it and bill it and, facilitate those services? Or they'll say, I want to add an associate, or I want to add another location. Okay, well, all those things have to be adjusted within the revenue cycle to support that. And are you at a place to do that? Is your aging, $200,000 behind now and you're going to add to it, or should you clean that up first before you move on to your next, whatever your practice goals are? So there's so many things that just tracking that data can tell you, um, from it, and it doesn't have to be big life-changing things too, right? Every year we know that the insurance plans change different things, right? They bring on new plans within insurance carriers, or they make adjustments within that, or maybe one employer group used to have one vision plan and now they have another vision plan. And so there's changes that happen that are external that you don't have any control over, but you have to have, from a business standpoint, you have to recognize those changes early and make internal adjustments to support that. So how do you do that? What is that going to look like? And so tracking your aging and looking at your billing KPIs on a regular basis can really help you see those things like month to month versus 6 months down the line going, I feel like there's something wrong, but I'm not really sure where to go. So
Kind of that concept of like, oh, if you're just looking here, like what happened? You've got to look upstream on
exactly.
stuff too. And I'm so bad at golf. I don't know if this is why this analogy comes to me. Because I had actually joined a women's golf league, and we had all these great golfers, and every now and again our little twosome would get paired up with instructors who were all great. But for my swing to get good, there was like 20 things that I needed to adjust, right?
Yeah.
And when I went with people who were good golfers, a lot of the times they were like, "Oh, you need to do this and you need to do this." It'd be like, "Great." But when I would work with one of the instructors, they'd be like, "Let's work on this first, and then let's work on this first." But when I would be working on that, my swing still stunk.
Yeah.
I was just fixing one thing, right? So anyway, when you were saying that about how when you look at the aging report, you can, look into the plans and don't add something new unless, you've got your aging under control or you can manage it. It makes me think of when everybody was telling me all the things I needed to change with my golf swing, which I never was able to change. I've now decided I am no longer golfing, and I will address that later on in my life. But you got to pay attention to everything. Otherwise, you're not going to get the results you want. So I liked your example of the first doctor of like, oh, production's up, but revenue's not up. So you might have discussed this a bit but specifically about like revenue or cash flow, what can your aging reports tell you about that?
Yeah. So doctors will often say too, right? Like, I just need to see more patients. I need to bring in more, I need more revenue. I need to see more patients. But I'm like, if you look at your aging, you probably already have all your patients sitting right there, that missing revenue. So looking at that, and then, you know, have you captured everything that you can capture, whether it's from a patient standpoint, or is it from the current insurance mix that you have, and looking at that payer mix, like what types of insurance plans do you have? What reimbursements are you receiving from those different plans? Who's your top payers? Who's your lower payers? Who's filling your appointment slots? Have you grown to a point where you've maxed out your scheduling, 3, 4, 5 weeks out? Maybe it's time to look at, what types of patients are filling those slots, and is that the most effective payer mix that you have, or is it time to get rid of some of the lower reimbursement plans that are taking up a lot of staff time, filling up your schedule, but not necessarily benefiting the practice any longer? So looking at everything holistically is the best place to start. And I'm getting a lot of questions about how do we negotiate fees with our insurance plans, which doesn't really happen so much anymore. But there are some markets, depending on your area and who your payer mix is, that you might have some negotiating power. But if you're not tracking any of this data,
Yeah.
then you don't have anything to go back and use as leverage. Like, you have to have some type of leverage. So numbers, and that data can kind of speak volumes. But you're kind of looking at it too. from the long game side, right? Like you want to know what's happening this month and next month, but you also want to have a 5-year forecast. Like which way are we going and how are we going to get there? And that helps keep you on track.
Today's episode is brought to you by OneSpot Billing Software. When a 2-doctor practice suddenly lost their biller and their practice administrator went on medical leave, their AR shot up to over 30%. A new biller was doing everything she could, but couldn't make a dent. After implementing OneSpot, AR dropped to 15% in just a few months and now hovers around 5%. OneSpot Billing gives teams the clarity they need to collect what you're owed. Visit onespotbilling.com/offer25 to book a demo and receive a $25 Amazon gift card. Yeah, I guess I never thought about the payer mix scenario of, if 50% of your payers are coming from a plan that is bringing you 10% of your revenue, right? I mean, if you look at numbers, you can't really argue with that. And not that you don't want to take care of all patients, but how can you structure it to be more effective? Interesting. So what metrics or KPIs do you recommend a practice track regarding their aging?
Yeah, so there's a number of them, but there's 6 that I always recommend that they start with, and then you can build on that based on the needs of the practice. But one of them is your aging overall, so 61 to 120 days out. Like, what is the percentage of that aging overall? And a national average benchmark is about 12 to 15%. So your accounts receivable 61 days and over should not equal more than 12 to 15% of your total aging. That's a good goal. And that goes for both insurance and patient aging, whether it's separate or combined. And then I look at what is the overall percentage for 120 days and over. So anything that's still sitting out there should be like 5% or less of your total aging. So if you're looking at that 121-day bucket and it's more than your current, there's some work to be done.
Yeah.
There's still a whole month or 2 sitting in your aging. There's some efficiencies there. And I think also some practices will let things just hang out there for years and years and years. So it's not even collectible anymore.
Yeah.
So we just need to
Which skews the numbers. I will tell you,
Mhm.
because I do see, the onboarding when people are doing OneSpot, and it's almost the first thing everybody goes, well, don't look at that, because not a lot of it is, real money that we could collect. We're like, it's okay. It's okay. Like, let's just, like you're saying, let's pay attention to it, get it cleaned up and manageable so that other things can happen. So
Yeah.
yes. Okay. Third one.
It's hard to write that off, right? Like,
Yes.
let's just
Yeah.
let it sit
Yeah. When you see it go.
5 years. It's done. Like, just
Yeah.
rip off the Band-Aid. And then the other thing is the days in AR. So how many days does it take from the time that the patient's seen until that account is paid off in full? Ideally, we'd like to see 28 days on average. If you're a high vision practice, it might be closer to 25, 24 days. But if you're seeing those days in AR bumping up to 32, 35, 40, there's some efficiencies that you can add to that to make it bring in more revenue on a timely basis. And then the other one I like is there's a gross collections and then your net collections. So gross collections would be, overall, how much are you bringing in on a regular basis? It kind of helps you I like to look at it more as a forecasting type metric, where you're looking at your 0 to 130 days, and I brought in, $75,000. I know that my write-off balance is going to be X, so I'm anticipating that I'm going to collect, the other amount.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see how close you are over that range of time, and it should be consistent, right? It's, and then seeing your net collections. So you would be looking back, like last 6 months or 3 months, 4 months, if you're working a really efficient revenue cycle. And that would be the amount that you collect of your contracted rates. So if you know that you should be collecting let's just say that 75,000, or I'll just say $100,000, and you know that your write-off rate is about 40%. So, that $60,000 I should be collecting a good chunk of. So what is the percentage that I've collected on that $60,000? And we like to see like 95 to 98% is a really good efficiency within a specific time frame. So ideally it would be 4 months, but you can look back and say, okay, if you're working through the patient aging and statements and all that, maybe you're looking at 180 days or a 6-month period. That should tell you how efficient that is happening.
It's nice. And you pointed out, if you're tracking it, then you see the anomalies. Like it should be consistent. I've talked to people that are like, oh, before I was tracking it, I missed things like a credentialing issue because I just wasn't like all of a sudden we're like seeing this bump. And then when we dig in, we realize we missed something with, one of our payers and it was a credentialing issue that, if you don't get fixed in a timely manner, you could be out on revenue. So tracking it, watching for consistency and seeing those anomalies can help you, yeah.
Absolutely. You can find them in a 30-day period instead of a 60 or 90-day period or longer. You can catch them right away. Or even if there's late payments, if you're like, wait, we normally get our, Medicare payments every 3 weeks, and now I'm looking at we're missing a good chunk of them. Why is that? And
Yeah,
is
what's
it a
going on?
issue? Is it a clearinghouse mission? Is it, we just didn't get the notification, maybe it hit the bank, but we didn't get the EOBs. Like what happened along the way? So it could be anything.
It could. Well, that is what I'm learning. The more time I spend in billing is the amount of detective work that teams have to put in, to figure stuff out and to figure out what's going on. It's really impressive. So
And,
probably frustrating, but
and to your point, the whole reason why you're really doing this isn't busy work, but it's really to track the consistencies. Your revenue cycle should be consistent and predictable and sustainable for your practice. And if you're not tracking it, then how do you even know if it's really working for you?
yeah. All right. Any other last tools or tips that you recommend when you're talking about looking at your aging or your aging reports?
Well, once you kind of look at those and you know what your aging is and what your billing KPIs are, then you can build some goals and strategies. And like I mentioned earlier, they can be short term, like, hey, we really want to improve on our patient revenue. So we're going to really focus on all the different pieces that make up patient revenue to make that more effective for the practice, as well as enhancing maybe our patient experience, right? Because that's all part of it too. And then, or if we want to add a dry eye clinic, or we want to add aesthetic medicine, or a new associate, or a new location, what does that look like? And maybe we're going to plan that, for the next 6 months, we're going to work on putting those pieces in place. So what changes do we need to make? And sometimes it's, they're quick, easy changes that you can put in place, and then there's other things that you're like, okay, well, we're gonna step it out, right? Like kind of like your golfing analogy, where you're like, I'm gonna take one thing at a time. We know we have to fix these 5 things. So what's the low hanging fruit that we can start with today that we're gonna bring in the most revenue for our practice? Let's start there, and then you have check-ins, right? Like the revenue cycle is a whole team sport, right? It's not just the biller, it's not like you just have one person that's responsible for all of that. In a small practice, it's everybody on the team. So it's good to kind of, okay, we'll meet in our huddles. What's working, what isn't working? Are we meeting those goals? What adjustments do we need to make? Here's our target, and stay focused in making those small adjustments. Small adjustments can make a huge difference in revenue over time if you're consistent with it.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
and don't give up if it's like, oh, that was just kind of hard, or I got pushback from this one patient, so we're not going to do that anymore. No, we're just going to keep going. Okay, you're going to have those patient pushbacks. So how do we address those in a positive way we can, rephrase it so it's working for the patient, not working against them? Like, what can we do to make the overall experience better? It's One of the things about revenue cycle is it's always changing, and whatever worked 2 years ago might not be working the same in your practice, depending on what additional, changes your payer mix put in place. But you just have to keep making those internal adjustments as we go, and small steps make a big difference over time, for sure.
Yeah. I had a closing question for you, but you kind of answered it earlier, but I'm still going to ask it because you are so, I've seen you talk to people. I've been involved in conversations that you've had, and I know the impact you make. And I know you don't get as good and as passionate about something as you are with this if it's not something that you love. And I know you mentioned a little bit, when you're talking about your background, that, you just didn't get stuck here. You like to be here, and you talked a little bit about it, but what is it that you do love so much about this part of the business?
Mm. Yeah. Um, so what I love about it is it's an accumulation of all things that we do, right? So all the different pieces come together in this one area. And if you really look at it and you really I like the operational pieces of it. It's like a puzzle, right? You get to analyze all these different pieces and then put it together holistically. And while there's variations, right, where every practice is billing out claims, every practice is seeing patients, right, and collecting patient balances, but it looks a little bit different in every single practice, depending on how each doctor likes to practice medicine, or how many staff members they have, or locations. Like, there's a lot of different variations. So that's one of the things I like about it, is the variation. It's always changing. It's always adapting. I think I'm always looking at ways of making things more efficient, and bringing in more revenue. And, I'm always looking for ways for improvement. But when you put all those pieces together, and I've worked with practices whose billing KPIs were way out of alignment, and we just kept meeting and chipping away at it. And over time, they were within those parameters or under, and it made a huge difference, like in the practice, like coming to work every day and not feeling overwhelmed, and just enjoying what they're doing. And they never thought that it was possible. So it's one of those things that I'm just like, when it all comes together, it's like magic.
Yeah, the impact you can make is
Yeah.
fantastic. And I think I'm such a data geek, and I'm like, this is such a measurable,
Yeah.
like, you can build a plan, you can meet on the plan, and you can really measure, the impact it's having, which, just for me, everybody likes all the warm fuzzies, but when you can, like, see it on paper, the
Yeah.
impact you're having, it's like you can do those cross stuff off your list, and do the victory dance. So
Yeah. And so it kind of takes some of the emotion out of it too, right?
yeah,
Because if you feel
yeah,
like you're banging your head every day and you're really struggling and you don't understand, and you're getting, you know, numbers don't lie, and we can make whatever adjustments we need to, but here's where we're starting. It's just numbers. There's no
yeah,
emotions attached, and then we can just work from there. It's so much easier.
yeah, yeah. Well, I could talk to you all day. But I really appreciate you joining me. I say all the time, I know nothing about this stuff, but I know a lot of really smart people. And obviously, I appreciate you coming and sharing your knowledge and all the stuff that you learn working with all the great practices that you work with. I do want to give you a chance. I know for PECA members, there's all sorts of resources for them, so we can share that as well. But if there's anything that you want to mention on ways that they can get extra support besides everybody calling you like I do.
Yes. So PECA is, which stands for Professional Eye Care Associates of America. We are a physician alliance group that promotes and protects independent eye care. And yes, as a member, you have a wealth of information, from discounts and vendor savings to education. We have a member business advisory team, which I am a part of. We also, within that team, we have optical advisors and operation advisors, financial advisors, marketing. We have a cold start program. So if you're starting or thinking about starting a new practice, we have resources and support for you as well. There's just so many things that we offer. If you're not a member, we do offer some certification programs that we offer to non-members as well. So that's something you can look at. Billing and coding is one of them, and we do have offer that a couple times a year. So there's lots of fun things that we do as well. So you can find out more on PECAA.com, and it's PECAA, PECAA.com.
It's always I can tell when people know you if they do the CCA or CAA. The funny spelling things. Anyway. Well, thank you again so much. Always nice to talk to you, and I'm sure everybody got lots of wonderful tips because you have great advice.
Thanks, Cindy. It was fun. It was fun being with you. So.
Thank you.